Yeah, I mean, women, it's funny, even spiritually, women sit higher spiritually than men because it's like they're the ones bringing everything into the world, right? Going back to what you said about the aggressiveness and everything. If you're mating with those men, that's who you're bringing into the world and that's what you're perpetuating, right?
Again,
So, and it's,
women complaining about players. Hold on, Michael. If women complain about players, you and I, if I were to complain about something, the stoplights here in Vegas, I think some of them are mistimed. I complain about the stoplights because the stoplights affect me. I complain about the front office of the Dallas Cowboys because it bothers me how bad they are. I complain about the front office of the Dallas Cowboys because it affects me. If women are complaining about players, are they complaining about players because they're not sleeping with them? Or are they complaining about players because they are sleeping with them? What do you think the answer is? Women don't complain about things that don't affect them. So if they're consistently complaining about men who are players, it's because they're giving these men sexual access. Now, when you ask them, they'll be like, well, no, that's other girls. I'm different. I don't do that. I'll be like, well, did you ever sleep with a player? And they're like, well, yeah, back when I was younger, I used to sleep with them. And that's essentially what goes on. The nice guy who has the attributes that they say they want, this incredibly vulnerable man, Kamala Harris's husband, basically, that archetype of man, that super vulnerable man, that type of man, while he may exist and is much easier for society to tame and control, women don't find that man attractive and never will because of evolution, because of our evolutionary proclivities. They never will find that man attractive. So what they'll do is women will say, I appreciate the male feminist and the feminist ally, the male feminist ally, but at the same time, they're going to go have sex with the Marlboro man. They're going to go have sex with the guy who goes his own way, who has his own level of boundaries, who has a masculine, attractive presence. They're going to continue to choose those men.
yeah, the feminism, all the feminism does is hurts women. It doesn't, I mean, it kind
It's
of,
one of the craziest things ever. It's like feminism caused women to have more free sex with men, but that gave men more leverage. And then
and
women
it
complained
backfired.
about it. It just
Yeah.
exactly, it backfired. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Like, I really rarely have a problem. Like feminism is just wrong, but I don't need to argue against it. It argues against itself. Like, literally, like, there's no reason to even have a discussion about it because it argues against itself. Anything, by the way, not just feminism, behaviorism too, in psychology. Anything that argues against or does not take into account human biology or human proclivities or natural selection or evolutionary psychology, anything that doesn't take those things into account, I don't need to argue it against. It's very similar to arguing against someone who doesn't believe in gravity and then they jump off of a balcony. It's just a function of like natural selection. It's Darwinism. I don't need to argue against someone who doesn't believe in gravity. Although I've argued against flat earthers before, but I don't need to argue against something that is empirically true. Evolutionary psychology is the truest form of psychology, meaning it's the one that has been the most battle tested of any other form of psychology. And so because of that, when people try to argue against it, feminism is the most anti-evolutionary psychology ideology that could possibly exist because it takes human nature out of the equation and just it replaces it with this sort of like socialist egalitarianism that it just lives in a fantasy world. And so
Well,
it's one of these things
it's
where
anti,
like you don't really have to argue against it.
I'm not entering this at
Go
all.
ahead.
I'm just saying it's like I said, it's everything defaults back to principles, right? So it's like people can fight and argue as much as they want about these trends, I would say, but eventually, once clarity comes in, it always defaults back to the principles, the biology, and it is what it is, right? So it's either it's like we can accept it or we can just waste our time fighting against it. But yeah, going back to like you were saying, it's like I tell all my guys to work out as well too, and it's like why is that? Is it because men and women have different structures and we have different purposes physically and energetically, right? And biologically too. So it's like if a man isn't with our form, we have certain responsibilities tied to that. So if we want power as a man, we have to fulfill those responsibilities, right? We can get into mating, get into taking care of things externally, whatever it is, right? And there's so much because nobody understands what a man or woman is anymore. There's all the confusion, right? So, like you were saying, the media is going to pump out, oh, guys need to be more vulnerable and this and that, whatever. And, I tell my guys, there's a thing between emotions and feelings, right? Feeling is a sense, it's a knowing, right? Emotion is, uh, oh, this light's taking too long or whatever. I'm gonna be all pissed off. Oh, the football team lost a game. That's emotion, right? That's all garbage. That's all perspective based. Feeling is more tapping into your inner knowing. That's going to guide you. That's going to give you more clarity. Um, these things they can become so gray, and then guys are like, what way do I go? How do I, and if you can't identify it, you can't use that thing as a tool and actually use it. So these guys are just stuck paralyzed, right? And everyone's kind of sitting around just in this chaos. and
Yeah, well,
confusion, right?
I think part of the problem is the way we express our feelings. If I feel happy right now, but I don't show it on my face because I'm focused on what I'm doing, to someone who doesn't understand the concept of stoicism, they would think internally, they would look at me externally and say he's withholding his feelings. Like, no, here's how I manifest my feelings. If I'm happy, do you know what I do? I try to make my clients more successful. I try to make my business more successful. I manifest my feelings with success and action. Because you manifest your feelings by crying, you manifest your feelings by yelling loud, by using expletives, or you manifest your feelings by being super expressive. That's your
Well, you see what
choice.
I'm.
Now,
Do you see what I'm saying? The difference between the
yeah,
emotion and feeling, because I think that's where the
for sure.
confusion is. Like the emotion is like, I'm angry. I express the anger, and it's gone. Right? It's just like energy flows through. It's yeah. I use it's gone. The feeling is like a state of being. It's like joy. It's love. It's all those things. Right? Those are feelings that you can maintain. Sort of when you're saying like, hey, I have joy, and I share that with my clients, and I help my clients exceed as well. Right? You're
Well,
not
well,
sharing. You're not sharing like anger with your clients and be like, hey, I'm angry now. I'm going to ruin your day too.
we'll express it like this. Let's say a few women come together in a book club, and one of the women in the book club, she expresses that she's having trouble in her marriage, and she starts crying, and the other women, they start crying too, and then they come up and hug her. That is a normal, healthy response for them to respond to
Yeah.
one another in that way, and they're having a feeling of love and kinship with one another, but they're expressing it with crying and physical hugging. I used to fly a KC-135 as a tanker navigator, an instructor navigator in the U.S. Air Force. And there was a crew. It was me, the co-pilot, the pilot, and the boom operator. I was a navigator. And so my love for my crew was equal to their love for one another, these females in the book club. But I didn't need to get up and cry and hug them, even though the emotion was there and it was still expressed, right? It's like, good job, Co. Whereas somebody would say, I love you, Becky, and hug them and cry. And there's all this emotion, not emotion,
Yeah.
emotion's the
Emotion
wrong word.
pouring out.
There's
Just
all
like
this
outpour of expression.
ostentatious outward expressiveness. So therefore, because I'm expressing outwardly this love that I have for this person. Again, there's nothing wrong if you want to do this. Me inwardly, as a U.S. Air Force officer, I'd be like, good job, pilot. Good job, Co. If I were to say that, I'm having the same feeling and they're responding with the same feeling that I am, but I'm not crying. I don't need to hug them all
Yeah.
the time. The feeling is the same. My choice to express it in a more stoic manner is not wrong, and it's not less healthy. It's just the way me as a man, I choose to express myself. So what you're saying is I'm wrong in the way I express myself because I don't express myself like a woman would. And that's just not true. If you read in 2019, the American Psychological Association said that traditional masculinity was harmful. Don't take my word for this. Pause this video right now and go look it up. American Psychological Association says that traditional masculinity was deemed harmful, specifically Stoicism. So if I feel a feeling like my son, he scores a touchdown, and instead of me crying and picking him up and spinning him around like it's a fucking Disney movie, if I'm like, hey, good job, Billy, but I still have the same feeling, I just don't express it outwardly, that's not unhealthy, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because later on in life, if I become a firefighter, a police officer, or a pilot, someone who has to deal with a high pressure situation, and all of a sudden we lose the engines,
in the middle of it.
yeah, exactly. Like, for instance, someone's gone into my house and kidnapped my family. When the SWAT team shows up, I don't need the SWAT team to show up and be like, Mr. Sartain, I just had a rough day today, and I just want to let you know that like Mercury's in retrograde and I'm just having like all these feelings. I want stoic looking men with murderous looks on their face to go in and save my fucking family.
Yeah.
To be fair, I'm the one who's going to go and save my family in reality. But like, that's what I want. I don't need the police to come and do a hostage negotiation while they're crying. I need stoicism. I need men who are focused. And even though they have emotions, they don't need to outwardly express those emotions. Because they choose to not consistently outwardly express those emotions, it doesn't mean they're holding their emotions inside or what they are doing is unhealthy from a psychological situation. What's happened is that non-stoic people don't know how to read stoic people. And because they don't know how to read stoic people, their answer is toxic or traditional masculinity is harmful. No, you just don't understand traditionally masculine men. And because you don't understand it, you misinterpret what they're doing and you don't know how to communicate like them. So what they want instead is for these traditionally masculine men to be more woman-like in the way that they express themselves. And when they do so, then that is healthy. That's a healthy way to express myself. Whether it's what I do is when I love someone, do you know what I do for them? I solve problems for them. When I love someone, Michael, I solve problems for them. I don't cry. I don't get on my knees and like, talk about cry about moments of unconditional love and give them unlimited prose and read poetry to them. If I love someone, I solve problems for them. My way
Yeah.
of expressing my love for someone is different from the way that someone who may be a little bit more feminine than me would express love. But it doesn't mean they're wrong, but it certainly doesn't mean that I'm wrong or that my stoic way of expressing love is harmful. It's not harmful. It's actually a lost art that men need to take up again, that we learned,
we're talking about
at least
that.
we used to learn in the US military, but we don't do that anymore. I express my love for people that I express the way I love people with actions. Whereas some people might sit there and, again, talk about long paragraphs of undying love for one another and highly expressive emotional conversations. For me, I go and I solve problems for people that I love. My way of expressing love is no more or less relevant than yours. But the problem is because you don't understand Stoicism, you think that I'm repressing my feelings or acting in an unhealthy way. You just don't understand my language. That's all that's.
Yeah, I like to say men try to get women to think like men and women try to get men to think like women. It just doesn't, it will never work, right? So everyone's spinning on
I have
wheels.
another way to do it. Women try to get men to express themselves emotionally, and men try to get women to see logic and reason. And most men who are smart just give up on that. They
Well,
don't
the thing
try
is,
to, again,
if you try to get a man to express emotionally, it's going to paralyze him, right? Because you're going to bring up guys like
correct.
it's like you said, like guys express our love through actions. We like to do one thing at a time, right? When you get a guy to express his emotions, it's all these other things. He's like, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about one thing about 5 seconds ago, but now, oh, fuck, so it's completely overwhelming. And what happens is if a guy can't focus on that one thing, he'll just shut down, right? So it works, all this stuff of trying to get men to be more emotional just works completely against them and it weakens them, right? These women that, a woman, I mean, the best thing you can do for a woman can do for a guy is like, hey, go do something, go reach out to another guy. And actually, it brings up a good point because going into the programs and everything, I always have these conversations. I'm like, it's rare to find good archetypes for men and women, right? So it's like more men need to seek out more good archetypes of men because those archetypes used to exist, right? As in, fathers and policemen and even movie stars, right? Same thing with women. And it's very hard to find any of that, especially in media that almost just doesn't exist at all anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the archetype that you're looking for in general is the man who would be willing to die for his family. I mean, the man who would be willing to take action in order to help other people. Rather, again, there's two ways to love the United States, right? You think about the people back home who are waving the American flag. And then I want you to think about those young boys who were storming Normandy back in 1944. The men who stormed Normandy knew that they were probably going to die and run it right in the middle of German machine gun turrets right there in Normandy in France. Those men express their love with action. The people back home express their love by waving the flag. These are two different ways of expressing love. And what I try to explain to people is you choosing to express the love that you have for your family by providing for them is no more legitimate than the other people expressing their love by crying. It's the same thing. It's just a lot of people have trouble with it because they don't understand these two different ways of communicating. So again, one of my favorite things, you ever watch the show Suits?
Yeah.
The main character, Harvey Specter. Harvey Specter was not a great lawyer because he was a great litigator. He was a great lawyer because he made problems go away. That's what I teach men. In general, if you want to know how I teach men to become higher status, you need to be the person who makes other people's problems go away. So for me, most of my guy friends, and this is pretty ubiquitous, most of my guy friends meet their girlfriends through me because I throw these massive social engagements I'm always introducing people to one another. And so they end up meeting the women that they date. My lead sales guy met his girlfriend through one of my events. And then my business partner, who's also my CMO, he met his fiance through one of my events. These guys will meet their partners through events that I throw because what am I doing? Essentially, I'm having a problem, their male loneliness, and I'm solving that problem for them. If I continue to make people's problems go away, my status then increases. That sounds very cutthroat. It sounds very animalistic. It sounds very black and white, doesn't it? But the reality is we're all hairless murder apes. But one of my favorite things is, and I don't know if Dr. Buss does this as a joke, but if you read his textbook, which is called Evolutionary Psychology, The New Science of Mind, the new 6th edition just came out last year, or the 7th edition. If you read the book, on the cover is the picture of a gorilla. And the reason why he has a picture of a gorilla is because in essence, we are all hairless murder apes. We want to see, human beings want to see themselves as like separate from the animal kingdom. Yes, for sure. We've learned concepts of quantum physics, and we understand concepts of telecommunication. We certainly have written and spoken language that other species don't have. But the reality is we are just as subject to biology as any other species is. And so that's what behaviorists and progressive thinkers want to pull you away from, is the concept that you are just an animal. And you are. I'm not saying that you don't have any level of spiritual enlightenment, but the reality is the reason why we're able to build buildings and the reason why we're able to form nation states is because we can all tell each other stories that we believe. What I try to tell people is, what story, think about a successful person, someone who has everything you want, someone who's succeeding in every way that you want to succeed, someone who has every single thing you want as far as a family, certain levels of happiness or material wealth, whatever it is. What stories are they not telling themselves that you're telling yourself? The thing that differentiates us from, like, say, dogs, dolphins, and monkeys is that those creatures don't tell themselves stories. They just live in their own objective reality, and we tell each other stories. And so what stories are you telling yourself? I'm not good enough. I'm not able to complete this task, or this other person is better than me. There's somebody out there with a delusional level of confidence that went out and started SpaceX and started Tesla, a delusional level of confidence that was able to start Amazon or start Microsoft or start Meta or whatever. Someone had a delusional level of confidence because of stories that they were telling themselves that you weren't telling yourself. Once you come to the realization that you can tell yourself stories that you are good enough to make it, that you have an idea that's going to make yourself and other people millions of dollars, billions of dollars, that you have the ability to solve other people's problems, you do so, then you can become outrageously successful by doing those kind of things, by having an internal locus of control, and by understanding your own psychology. You're able to do those things. But in order to do those things, you have to first admit we're hairless murder apes. Click the link in the description below, and I'll send you my high status networking playbook for free so you can start meeting high quality women today.